These are crazed people that President Trump and Republicans are having to deal with. And that's why President Trump has said Republicans need to get tough, they need to get smart, and they need to use this option to get rid of the filibuster, to reopen the government and do right by the American public. We know, Maria, based on the polling and based on common sense, that the vast majority of this country wants the government reopened. That's what President Trump is willing to do. That's what he wants. And he's willing to use any lever to make it happen.
Except negotiate with the Democrats, apparently. That's one lever he's unwilling to pull. Anyway, there is White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt once again shouting on Fox News as she and her boss are panicking about a string of potential high-profile defeats, not just regarding the government shutdown, but the filibuster, which Trump has once again publicly demanded that Republican lawmakers in the Senate abolish, and he's facing some resistance on that front. And the Supreme Court is set to hear a case which could, not guaranteed, but could overturn Trump's disastrous tariffs. So that's 3 high-profile potential defeats on the docket there. And Trump is panicking, and so is Leavitt. And that's why she's very animated during this Fox News interview. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, it's tough to believe Leavitt and Trump when they say, yeah, we'll do anything to reopen the government, when the one thing that they could do is negotiate in good faith with the Democrats whose votes they need to reopen the government, right? That's one lever they are not pulling. So again, they're full of shit when they say, yeah, we'll do anything. Not really. Trump will do anything to hoard more power unto himself, which is what abolishing the filibuster is. Now, we're going to play another clip on the filibuster, and then I will remind you of where my thoughts on this are, and we have some other clips as well. So speaking of the filibuster, Karoline Leavitt also had this to say.
Karoline, real quick, is the president not concerned that if you scrap the filibuster, it will be used against the Republicans in the future, where the Democrats will pass legislation without any input from Republicans?
I think the president is realistic in realizing that the Democrats are going to do that anyway. You had 2 Democrats who were opposed to it, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. And where are they? Neither of them are in the United States Senate today because they were pushed out by the far left radical base that has completely taken over the Democrat Party. Again, these are radical left lunatics in charge of the Democrat Party today, and they will nuke the filibuster. They want to make Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico states. They want to pack the Supreme Court. They don't care about our sacred institutions in our country. And so Republicans need to play tough and they need to play smart. And that's what President Trump thinks.
Okay, so just a couple of things. Yes, I would love for Democrats to make D.C. and Puerto Rico a state. This country was founded on the notion that there should be no taxation without representation. And for all intents and purposes, Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. are unrepresented, even though they have substantial populations. I mean, hell, Washington, D.C. has a greater population than some states that have actual Senate and congressional representation. That's an issue. Of course, Republicans don't want that, even though Republican presidents have admitted states into the union before. Again, when she says sacred institutions, what are you talking about? I mean, Hawaii, we didn't start as 50 states. Hawaii was the last state admitted into the union, I believe, in the 50s. So it's not like adding states violates the sacred institution of the United States, you moron. As far as packing the court is concerned, we definitely need to unpack the court by expanding the court. It was Republicans who packed the court under the leadership of Mitch McConnell by refusing to give President Obama's Supreme Court nominee Merrick Garland a hearing, not just voting against him, which they had the right to do, but they refused to even grant him a hearing. They held that seat open because it was an election year and we've got to let the people decide. And then Trump won the election and they filled that seat with Justice Gorsuch. And then they said, well, listen, because we're creating this new rule that you can't fill vacancies in an election year, if Donald Trump wins the election and there's a vacancy in 2020, which is an election year, we won't vote to confirm any of Trump's nominees. We'll be consistent, we promise. And then, of course, they lied and was like, well, okay, actually, no. When Justice Ginsburg died in 2020 and it was just weeks before the election, then they packed the court again by breaking their own new rule and passing the confirmation of Justice Amy Coney Barrett. So it was Republicans who packed the court. They didn't expand it, but they packed it through bad faith tactics, through dishonesty, through pure cynicism. They lied to Democrats. They lied to the American people. But even changing the court, the size of the court, that is not a violation of a sacred institution. That's just a matter of federal law. The court has changed size multiple times throughout the history of this nation. The founding fathers changed. They expanded and shrank the court. President Adams, President Jefferson, President Lincoln, they changed the size of the Supreme Court. It's been 9 since basically the end of the Civil War. But again, that's not set in stone. That's not written in blood anywhere. So she's just full of shit. She just doesn't want Democrats to leverage the power if and when they get it. the way that Republicans tried to do under Trump. Now, we get to do whatever we want with power. You all can't do it. That's really what this is about. It's pretty petulant. But so far, Trump is facing some resistance in terms of abolishing the filibuster. Senate Majority Leader John Thune is opposed to it, presumably because he's worried about what would happen if Democrats got back into power and the filibuster was not available for Republicans who want to stall anything that Democrats do. To say nothing of the fact that Democrats have a more robust and aggressive policy agenda than the Republicans. Republicans just really care about tax breaks, for tax cuts for the rich, which you can pass through reconciliation, and judges, right? Which again, that just requires a simple majority vote. So the filibuster is more useful to them because Democrats, we want to do a lot of shit, okay? So we'll see what happens, but right now, some Republicans, the Republicans who need to vote to overturn the filibuster are currently holding the line, and that's pissing Trump off and making Karoline Leavitt very nervous. So with that in mind, let's play some other clips.
Well, we do have backup plans, and the president's trade team is working diligently on those contingency plans. But ultimately, Maria, we are hopeful that the Supreme Court will rule on the right side of the law and do what's right for our country. The importance of this case cannot be overstated. The president must have the emergency authority to utilize tariffs. Look at what President Trump has been able to do by leveraging tariffs and leveraging the might of the United States economy. We are the #1 consumer country in the world, and every country around the world knows it.
We were the #1 country in the world under President Biden. Okay, so again, by your own logic, Biden is objectively better than Trump because Biden didn't need to leverage widespread tariffs or trade wars to get that done. So you guys, again, you're so stupid and full of shit. That's the problem. That's what they do. Again, they're nervous. Now, listen, I understand the nervousness. I talked about this with Strict Scrutiny co-host and University of Michigan Law School professor Leah Littman about this. She thinks it's going to be tough because the law sits squarely against Trump's tariffs. Let's be very clear. The letter and the spirit of the law cut against Trump here. On the other hand, this is a Trump-loyal court, 6-3 conservative supermajority, 3 of the 6 appointed by Trump himself, and then the other 2 that preceded Justice Thomas, Justice Alito. In many ways, they're more MAGA than the actual MAGA appointees. So you've got 5 justices right there who are just inclined to do whatever the hell Donald Trump wants, and that's a majority. So even though the law says one thing, the justices' personal biases and fear of Trump and loyalty to Trump cut a different way. So, Professor Littman says, if she had to bet, it's going to be close, but she says if she had to bet, she's probably more likely to believe that they'll uphold Trump's tariffs than overturn them, which again just goes to show that the Supreme Court's full of shit. But we'll see what happens. There is a risk here. Now, this idea that Trump needs to have the tariff authority. Why? Why does he need to have the sweeping tariff authority, especially when his party controls Congress? Congress is the one who's supposed to have the power of the purse. They're supposed to be on all financial and economic matters the dominant branch by far. But hey, your party controls Congress, so it's not like you have to deal with Democrats. Just go to the Republicans in Congress and say, hey, the president believes that we need to tariff this country, and this country at this rate to accomplish this goal, and have a vote on it. If it's sane, if it's reasonable, this MAGA cult Republican Party should be able to give you the votes necessary. This is total bullshit on Leavitt's part. Understand what this is. This is about hoarding power unto the executive as long as Trump is in office. Again, you could at least understand the logic if Leavitt said, listen, we agree that, it'd be great to work with Congress about tariffs, but the fact of the matter is that the radical left lunatics in Congress, they control Congress, the Democrats control Congress. Then you could at least mechanically understand why Trump and Leavitt would be making the argument that they're making, like, hey, look, we can't work with Congress because Congress won't work with us, so I've got to have the ability to do it myself. But that's not the case because his party's in control of Congress. It's so embarrassing. And this idea that we have the best economy in the world. Yeah, we had the best economy in the world before this. You don't get credit, okay? Especially when by many major macroeconomic metrics, you all have ruined the economy that Joe Biden left you. But I digress. One last clip.
We certainly hope so. Look, we hope the government opens tomorrow. We have been saying this for 32 days in a row. The Democrats want to try to renegotiate the entire healthcare system that they created, by the way, and that's why they're holding the government hostage. They want to add $1.7 trillion of new spending and, again, give taxpayer-funded Medicaid to illegal aliens. That is a red line in the sand for President Trump.
Good news, if that's a red line in the sand, then you have nothing to worry about because, of course, that's not what Democrats are proposing. Federal law prohibits Medicaid funds to go to illegal immigrants. Now, it is true that if any person in the United States goes to the emergency room, federal law under President Reagan, so this is a 40-year-old law, that was upheld by it was created by a Republican president, upheld by Republican presidents, including Trump. This happened under Trump. Term one's happening under Trump right now. It is true that emergency rooms must treat people regardless of their citizenship status. But in terms of actually allocating Medicaid assistance and Medicaid funds to illegal immigrants, it's prohibited by federal law. So she's full of shit there. Again, they're panicking about this because the stage is set potentially for multiple high-profile defeats. We'll see what happens. It could work out in their favor, but that's why she's so upset right now, and that's why Donald Trump is panicking as well. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.